Now, this might be difficult for someone who's listening. Let me go back to the individual who wrote me. It's like, I'm older. It's difficult for me to focus. I think one of the things they said is, I think my rainbow may be fading. Now, let me say this. If you see your rainbow fading in your mind, guess what's going to happen? Your rainbow will fade. We have more power than we know. What's the difference in seeing your rainbow fade versus seeing your rainbow come into vivid color? The only difference is what you choose. The only difference is what you choose. Is it going to be difficult? You ever consider that it's supposed to be? Why is it supposed to be difficult? Because whatever I'm aiming at, in order for me to hit the target and maintain my ability to hit the target, that means I have to develop into the person I'm aiming to be. And as I develop into the person I'm aiming to be, that requires that certain things are burned off of me. The certain ways of being are lost. And so I'm going through character development. Like, in order for me, like, if you intend to be a prosperous business person, let's say a prosperous entrepreneur, then that's going to require that you develop a certain level of persistence in your life. And so, of course, there are going to be things that come your way because you have to develop persistence. And it is what your ability to see what you're aiming for that allows you to overcome each and every blockade. Not how. Because your blockade is different from my blockade. And that's one of the reasons why, as a coach, I don't give advice. Because how I created my path is going to be different because you are different. You are uniquely and wonderfully made in the way that the Creator intended for you to be, which means that your path is going to be different from everyone else's. So the gentleman wrote the book on how to get rich. What he basically described is how he got rich. Now, there's value in that. But how he got rich and how I got rich are completely different. Last week, I dived into this conversation about being your best. And now I want to address, I got some emails, and the emails went exactly where I want to go next, which is discussing this how problem, this how opportunity that we have when it comes to thinking about or our dreams or what it is that we aspire to. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Like I aspire to something, I can see the possibility, but then I get completely distracted with what it's going to take in between where I am now, which is point A, and then point B, the possibility. Like one of the things I've noticed, one of the major requests that I get from the clients that I coach and the executives that I work with is, what do I do in between? Like, how do I get there? And what I notice is that this notion of how becomes an obsession or almost like a blockade, where the focus is removed from the goal, the aspiration, or the dream, and placed on how I'm going to get it done. I think this is one of the reasons why how-to books are such a big deal. One of the reasons why, if someone is explaining how something is done, how to get rich, right? Forget his name, Ramit something, but he wrote a book, How to Get Rich. I read it. I think millions of other people read it, right? Because it's like, how to do something, like how to get rich. Is the answer here? And if the answer was there, then everybody who read the book would be rich, right? So how do we get underneath this how obsession, this how blockade? And that's what I want to talk about. Anybody that has a question about how this morning, give me a phone call, because I do believe that like real life examples will support the listeners in a way that sometimes just explaining it does not. So give me a phone call, 773-591-1690. Like if there's something that you're like, how do I get this done? Something you've been obsessed with in terms of how, then let's talk about it. Because this is not, I believe this is probably the major thing that is plaguing most people that have a deep aspiration to move ahead. Is how. Like, how do I get it done? And I want to talk about why I believe the focus on how is the major reason most of us don't get where we want to go. And so that's what I mean in terms of this is the show that last week we talked about, okay, how do I get, like how can I be at my best? Or I challenged you to be at your best. And I actually expected the response, which was like, Linnell, man, that show inspired me. However, how? Like, how do I become my best self? And let me give you, like, I'm going to start the show. Most of the time, folks don't do this. But I'm going to start the show with what I believe is the answer. And the reason I'm going to do that is because just because I give you the answer doesn't mean, like, I know this to be true. Just because I provide the answer doesn't mean people just run. And they're like, okay, I got it. Because I've been coaching for well over a decade, almost a decade and a half, hundreds and hundreds of clients. And even when my clients have this answer, there's still a struggle because as human beings, our propensity is to go right back to how. So even when we get the solution doesn't always work for us because we go right back to, all right, well, how am I doing this again? So let me give an example. If I want to be my personal best, then I have to, and by the way, if you all have been listening to me over the years, you've heard me walk through this model. But the very first step, as a matter of fact, I think we have the model on how to achieve anything or how to take control of your life. And where you could put that up. But even in this framework, I created a framework for the Slay Your Goals members. And by the way, this show, like I was really thinking about Slay Your Goals members for this particular show. And let me say this too, before we get into the content of the show. If you've been struggling with gaining clarity on being your personal best, and you're not a Slay Your Goals member, like you've been putting it off, procrastinating, or I don't have the time for that, or you are a former Slay Your Goals member. I got one email from a former member who was like, hey, I can't, maybe this isn't for me. Like maybe they basically, gave up. And I'm going to talk about the 10 reasons that we struggle with focus. The number one reason, there's one main reason. And by the way, that's my answer to the how question. There's one main reason we struggle with focus. I'm going to talk about that too during today's segment. But this person that wrote me said, hey, they blamed their age. And let me say, for those who are a bit more mature who are listening, is there science that as you get older, your memory fades? Yes. Is there science that says as you get older, it becomes more difficult to focus? Yes. Is there science that says that there are practices and routines that you can create that support your level of focus and memory as you age? Yes. Yes. So if you are a more mature listener and you feel like the things that I talk about are inspiring and motivating, but you're just at a point where you don't know how, this show is for you. This one thing that I'm going to talk about where you are able and willing to focus in this one area, and it changes everything in your life. So what's the one thing? Let's start there. What's the one thing that you must do? It's in today's title. The title of today's show is How to Develop Your Aim. How to develop your aim and focus. How to develop your aim and focus. So what is the one, if there were a silver bullet, it's not a silver bullet because then there's other things you got to figure out. But if there were one thing I would, and you've heard me say it before, I would instruct you to do if you want to transform your life. And that would be to do a better job aiming. Do a better job aiming. Where are you focused? And I'm also share, and I was fighting this, but I'm also share 10 reasons we struggle with focus. And the reason I was fighting it is because I believe the main reason we struggle with focus is because we don't know where we're aiming. So I could be like, forget 10 reasons. Here's one reason. Where are you aiming in life? So if we go back to last week's show, where I was like, the title of last week's show, if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually looking it up because I'm like, what was the title of last week's show? I'm dissecting the meaning of your best, dissecting what it means to be your best, right? So one of the main reasons many of us aren't our best is because we don't know what that looks like. You can't even begin to imagine what it looks like, which means that if you had to aim and shoot it, you would miss it. You would miss it. So the very first step is not to think about how would I get better. The very first step is to gain clarity on what you're aiming at. Now, I could spend the rest of the show on this, like just helping you perfect your aim. But I want anybody that can hear the sound of my voice right now to just, on a scale of 1 to 10, when you think about what you're aiming at in your life, how clear is your focus? I would imagine, if you're being honest with yourself, there are going to be a few people you're like 9, 10. And maybe you're there. But let me be clear about what a 9, 10 actually looks like when it comes to aim. That means that in the 4 pillars of life, you are so clear about what you want to create that you can see the color. When you think about your health and well-being and what that looks like, when you put that vision in your mind, you see color. Like you can see, like right now, if I were to explain my health and well-being aim, my health and well-being aim as it stands right now is aimed at the week of March 29th through April 7th. I am in the mountains. There's greenery all around me. And I am trekking and hiking. And my body is fit. I feel well. I feel good. And I'm headed to trek gorillas. It's so that's how clear my aim is for my health and well-being. And it goes up to March. You said, well, what's your aim going to be after that? I don't know. I don't care. I'll probably create it on the plane back home, right? From Uganda. Like, all right, so what's the next game I'm going to play? But my aim is that clear. So everything that I'm doing between now and the end of March, well, this is this month, the end of this month, is based on where I see myself in terms of my health and well-being, what I intend to do in a few weeks. Everything I'm up to. And so that creates my action. So on a scale of 1 to 10, like how clear is your aim on the things that you want to develop in your life? How clear is your aim on your relationship? If you're married, on what you want to create with your spouse. How clear it's funny because my wife is going with me. And so a lot of my aim around relationship is also like what I want us to be experiencing in Uganda together, right? So it's like, okay, how do I begin creating the environment now? Clear aim, right? And because I'm focused on that, it doesn't matter what she does now. A lot of us are like, oh, well, today I just don't. We get so distracted by what's happening in the moment because the aim for the future isn't clear. Money. Oh. I like talking about money because I believe that this is what most of us care the most about. Right? You would think it would be health. You would think it would be health. But I'm convinced it's not health because of the number of BBLs I see. Like, that's not healthy. Like, you could die on the operating table. And so if I were concerned about my health and well-being, would I do that to my body? They out here, too. I'm like, $5,000, $10,000 for that. So you spent money on that. Like, where's your aim? Where's your aim? How is that going to look at the age of 65 or 70? How's that? Like, we're not aiming. Like, I'm so clear that folks aren't aiming. Like, we're so caught in right now that somebody's like, what's a BBL? Anyway, it's, so where are you aiming? Where are you aiming? Money. What is your financial aim? And by the way, this is not something I think works. Like, I know it works. There's evidence in my life. There's evidence in the life of clients. I know that when you know how to aim, everything changes. Everything changes when you create a clear and focused aim. So back to my mature listeners. I think what happens as we age, we begin to notice like a dilapidation in certain areas of our life. I used to be stronger. And that becomes the focus. And when that's my focus, I can create all the reasons I can't do something. And let me be clear about it. If youth was the answer, you would have done it when you were young. Like, that's a quotable right there. Like, if youth was the answer, you would have created it when you were young. So let's consider that if you're going to make age the excuse, then that means that everyone who is young has no excuse. And everyone who is young is dealing with the same thing that those who are aging are dealing with. And that is a lack of aim. Like the aim is just off. And so young people are aiming at something different, right? Like when I was, let's be clear, when I was in my 20s, I was aiming at girls, women. It's like, that's what I thought of. Like I woke up thinking about it. You know, am I going to see a pretty girl today? Right? And by the way, some of that is biological and hormonal. I mean, and the creator puts that in us on purpose. So it's okay. Like young man listening who's like, well, what else should I be thinking about? It's like, I get it. Right? Right? It's like, I get it. However, if you can include like, oh, and how will I take care of her? Right? When I find her, and put an aim, like a more panoramic aim in view, where you're focusing on your health. You know, you're focusing on how you're going to relate to that woman. You're focusing on how you're going to take care of that woman. Like you could actually use the hormonal and biological wiring the creator put in you to create much more than you otherwise would. Like your passion for a pretty girl could be also your passion to take care of her. Like, so I need to get money. Right, I need to, like, you can use all of that wiring. So to me, there's no excuse. It's like widen your view, right, and gain clarity on. And when I meet her, I need to be able to take care of her. All right, that's for the young men who might be listening. You're like, you're right, man. I can't focus on nothing else. It's like, well, just widen it. Now, let's put this in perspective. Like, let's think about a sniper. A sniper has to go through certain steps before they pull the trigger. And no matter how great of a marksman they are, if they don't aim, they will miss every time. So here's the other piece. I believe that there are people who are brilliant. I mean, absolutely capable. But because they don't aim properly, they miss every time. And I believe a lot of you are listening. Like, I believe there are people listening right now who, like, you're like, man, I know I'm smart. I know I'm brilliant. I know I have, like, these talents and gifts. I know I got what it takes. Why am I not hitting the target? And I will tell you it's because you're just pulling the trigger. Pop, 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 pop. You're like, I'm shooting in that direction. But you're not aiming. What does it require to aim? Well, got a buddy of mine that was a special forces marksman. Like he actually, like they gave him the marksmanship award. I believe in the military, you even get a patch or something where people know, like that's the guy that I want in my platoon, or like I want to be with him in battle, like, because when he turns his weapon, he gonna hit the target, right? And I was asking him about this concept of aim. And he was like, well, Linnell, aiming is more than just seeing the target. He was like, but it's also seeing yourself hit the target. He said, in seeing yourself hit the target, everything else has to disappear. Now think about that. Everything else has to disappear. He says, so when I'm aiming at a target, he was like, first, the only thing I'm concerned about is what I see through that scope. What's happening around me, the fly that landed on my ear, like everything else, like goes away. It doesn't matter. So then we could say, almost like the number one reason most people don't have a clear aim in life is because when the flies of life land on their ear, when they're trying to aim, they take their head out the scope and they swat it off. What's that? What's that? You say, well, Linnell, that's only natural. Isn't that only natural? Yeah, but what are the flies? Because I believe the flies that distract us aren't necessarily like the thing that's itching the ear. It's the thing that you use to scratch the itch, to stay distracted from the aim, right? Like Netflix, like your favorite TV show is the fly that lands on the ear when you're looking through the scope. And because you're so drawn to it, it's the same thing that, would cause a person to flick it off there, like that reaction. It's like my show is on, you're on the couch. Like you can't help it. The same way if a fly landed on your ear, you can't help but to swing. Let me knock that off. You can't help it. So now your aim is off. You're not looking through the scope. You're not looking at what it is. You're not focused on what it is that you want to create in your life. Now, I started with talking about, like, most people are obsessed with how. Like, how do I get there? I haven't even talked about how, because there's no need to talk about how if you can't aim. Why, and by the way, how is nothing more than another distraction, because how is like obsessing about, when I pull this trigger, then how is the bullet going to leave the clip, get knocked through the barrel of the rifle? This is why how is like ridiculous, because this is what people are trying to figure out in their lives when they obsess about how. Then get hit by the component that pushes the bullet through the rifle. Is my rifle barrel lubricated enough for the bullet to fly through straight? I wonder if it's lubricated enough. There are people who are like taking apart the rifle in their life, right? Saying, "Oh, I'm working on my goal." It's like, no, you're not. Like you're distracting yourself. You should be just put the rifle back together and look through the scope. Aim. Just aim. Well, I need to make sure it's working right. Like, you get where I'm going? That's how many of us say, ooh, I was inspired by that. I need to aim and shoot. Does my rifle work? And they'll go and they'll take apart the whole rifle. And then they'll get confused. What component goes where? And they never aim. Never aim. Rifle sitting somewhere. And by the way, I'm talking about your figurative rifle in life, right? Rifle sitting somewhere not even put together. And then you wonder why I'm not where I want to be. First step, aim. My buddy that's a marksman never spoke about how the bullet travels. He never talked about how the bullet hits the target. He not once brought up thinking about how that bullet is going to hit the target. Not one time. When I was like, how do you hit your target every time? He never talked about the bullet. So then, if he's an expert marksman, why are we trying to figure out how we're going to get where we're going in our lives? First thing he said is, everything, I look through that scope and everything else goes away. The next thing he said is, I lock in. I can see the bullet hit the target. And then I focus on my breath. Because the one part of me that's moving, that I can't stop from moving, are my lungs. And I need to take the shot between breaths so I don't sway the rifle. I'm sitting, the rifle is already propped. Often they have, I forget what you call it, but the rifle's sitting there, it's already propped. And now, between breaths, I'm aiming. All I care about is the target flies, landing on my ears, my nose. Nothing else matters. I'm focused on the target. Between breaths, let it out, pull the trigger, see it go through. Bullseye. Not once did he ask himself how the bullet was going to travel from the clip, through the barrel, out the barrel, to the target. Not once was he concerned with how the bullet was going to get there. He never said it. He never said it. All he did was focus on the bullet hitting the target, going through that red. Done. Goal accomplished. I want to walk us through better ways to focus on aiming. And why, and further convince you on why you should avoid the how blockade. I call it a blockade. Like, how gets in front of what you're aiming at, right? It literally puts a blockade, really literally puts a brick wall in front of what you're aiming at. Now, this might be difficult for someone who's listening. Let me go back to the individual who wrote me. It's like, I'm older. It's difficult for me to focus. I think one of the things they said is, I think my rainbow may be fading. Now, let me say this. If you see your rainbow fading in your mind, guess what's going to happen? Your rainbow will fade. We have more power than we know. What's the difference in seeing your rainbow fade versus seeing your rainbow come into vivid color? The only difference is what you choose. The only difference is what you choose. Is it going to be difficult? You ever consider that it's supposed to be? Why is it supposed to be difficult? Because whatever I'm aiming at, in order for me to hit the target and maintain my ability to hit the target, that means I have to develop into the person I'm aiming to be. And as I develop into the person I'm aiming to be, that requires that certain things are burned off of me. The certain ways of being are lost. And so I'm going through character development. Like, in order for me, like, if you intend to be a prosperous business person, let's say a prosperous entrepreneur, then that's going to require that you develop a certain level of persistence in your life. And so, of course, there are going to be things that come your way because you have to develop persistence. And it is what your ability to see what you're aiming for that allows you to overcome each and every blockade. Not how. Because your blockade is different from my blockade. And that's one of the reasons why, as a coach, I don't give advice. Because how I created my path is going to be different because you are different. You are uniquely and wonderfully made in the way that the Creator intended for you to be, which means that your path is going to be different from everyone else's. So the gentleman wrote the book on how to get rich. What he basically described is how he got rich. Now, there's value in that. But how he got rich and how I got rich are completely different. And how he maintains his wealth and how I maintain my wealth, there might be similarities, but different. Now, was it some good stuff? Yeah. He was like, this is the best credit card with the most rewards. I went and looked it up. Turned out I had it. Just wasn't using it, right? Oh, I need to start. So did I get good stuff? Absolutely. But I believe we put too much focus. I am convinced we put too much focus on how. Way too much focus on how versus the aim. So this morning, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of where you're aiming in your life? Many folks are getting ready for church this morning. Why? For what? What are you going to church for? What are you aiming at spiritually? Do you know what you're looking to get this morning? Do you know what you spiritually need this morning? Like where you're looking to, like you're so clear on your spiritual development. My fear is that most of us are doing what we do because we believe we're supposed to do it. We're not really clear on why. And there's something about the clarity of why that enhances your everyday experiences. The person who walks into church this morning, who is clear on why they are there, they know where they're aiming spiritually, is going to get exponentially and abundantly more than the person that just showed up. And the person that showed up will likely have a good experience. They'll have the singing and worship. They'll be like, woo, oh, hallelujah. They have all the feelings. The preacher would get up. They'd be like, that was good. But by Monday morning, it's all gone. It was just an experience. Whereas the individual that was clear on their aim, they know exactly what they need, exactly where they want to go. Like what they get in worship, it does something different in their spirit, right? It like encapsulates something. Then when they hear the preacher, all of a sudden it's like, that's the scripture. That's the teaching that I need to take me to where I intend to go. So Monday morning, the scripture is written. They wake up. They're like, this is where I need to go. Can you see the difference? If you intend to bumble through life, you cannot be upset when you bumble into a pitfall. Like you can't, like you just, why is it so difficult? Well, there's no intention. I would rather experience intentional difficulty pursuing my goals than the haphazard difficulties that people run into who aren't focused on anything. I rather experience the flies of life landing on my ear as I aim, rather than not aiming at anything and still swatting flies. Either way, you're going to be swatting. Where's your aim this morning? Like, where are you aimed at? You're curious about how to be your best. Do you even know what it looks like? Have you imagined what that could be? The number one detractor from aim and focus is distraction. Like hands down. Now, I can go through all 10 of these. I'm going to do it very quickly at the bottom of the hour. But number one is distraction. And distractions are what take our aim off what it is that we intend to create. And the first hour, I asked those that were listening, if you missed it, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your aim? how would you rate your aim on the things that you want to create in your life? And this is in tandem with the show last week, dissecting your best. Like, what is your best? And what I'm afraid of is we can have a conversation about what the best is, but many people can't see it. And so now my question to you is, all right, if you loved last week's show on becoming your best, now it's time for you to create a mental image of what your best actually is. And that image should be so clear you can see color. You can see color when you think about it, when you visualize it. This is my best in my health and well-being. This is my best in my relationships. This is my best in my work. This is my best with money. This is my best when it comes to my purpose and my spirituality. And everything in my life is intentional because I know what I'm aiming at. I know why I'm going to church this morning. I know what the next spiritual hurdle is in front of me because I'm clear on my spiritual aim. I know what my next health and well-being hurdle is because I'm clear on my health and well-being aim. And what I'm afraid of is many of us don't really aim at anything. We have ideas directionally. And so, like, if we were, quote unquote, marksmen, we're shooting in the area, but not hitting the target. Not hitting the target. And then some of us will actually measure, oh, but I wasn't that far off. And we'll count that as success. But, you know, where I come from, if you don't hit the target, you don't count it. You don't count it. And by the way, we don't like that because that equates to actually saying that I'm failing. And that's something that we also avoid. Another reason many of us are distracted is just clear avoidance of what matters in life. Like avoidance. I got that at number 3. Avoidance. You're avoiding what you should be handling. And as a result, you can't aim. Because what you should be handling is, is over here acting up. So you're constantly looking at it, like, I should. It would be like, again, if we took a marksman who's looking through the scope and there's actually something he could handle. Let's say there was, a branch that keeps smacking him against the side of the face as he looks through the scope. And he's, like you would say, well, you told him to focus. Well, why wouldn't he look, take his eye off the scope for a moment and break the branch and take it off? Now I can look through the scope. What happens for many of us, we have things that we're avoiding in our life, bills, relationship issues, like we're just pushing it. And then we wonder why we can't aim. Because whatever that is constantly tapping us on the side of the head as we look through the scope. Like what if you just stopped and broke the branch and removed it? It's okay. Now let's aim. Now let's aim. But instead I'm acting like it's not there. Well, Linnell, you said I shouldn't pay attention to the flies on the ear. That's uncontrollable. You can't control that. There are things that you can actually control. Well, how much debt do I have? Let me add that up. Let me get very clear so it stops popping into my brain every time I aim. Because that's what's happening. Every time I try to aim, then it's like, well, you get all that debt. Well, how much? I don't know. It's a lot. Well, how much? And then once you find out how much, all of a sudden, you'll be surprised how your ability to clear it out, like your ability to actually do something about it, shifts. Or maybe, folks, here's the other thing. Folks will aim at being rich, aim at being a millionaire. And that's 500 yards away, where getting out of debt is 10 yards away. And that's what you should be aiming at. Like, people, you ask them, well, what's your goal? My goal is to make $1 million. Well, okay. Now, I don't know their financial situation. And then later you find out that they're $10,000 in debt. And they're trying to figure out why they can't make $1 million. And it's like, well, maybe if the goal was to eliminate your debt first, right? Let's hit the 10-yard mark and then shoot for the 100-yard mark. But a lot of us will go for the 100-yard mark and just keep missing when there are like things right in front of us that we should be aiming at? How do you develop your aim and your focus? How I learned money was from spending time with people who had money. Was it uncomfortable? 100%. And by the way, I believe one of the reasons why when we are in like poor financial situations, we hold like this disdain for people with money is because like we don't understand it. Right? We don't understand it, or we don't believe like they could have gotten that. Like if I'm working honestly every day, I can't believe that they're honest and they got that. They have to be. And by the way, what you're doing is actually pushing yourself further away from your financial goals, because whatever emotional energy you have towards people with money is the emotional energy that is keeping you from money. Because then you're like, well, if you don't want to be like those people, then in order for you to be wealthy means you have to be like those people. So you should get very curious about how you feel about people with money if you desire to have money. And I believe most of us desire to have money. And so you got to be very thoughtful about, then how do I feel about people with money? That's a whole nother topic. That's a whole lesson. But anyway, I got invited years ago. This is like 2007, 2008. I got invited by a wealthy friend of mine. It was actually, I had him on the air, Jeff Lewandowski. So we were building our relationship. He talked about how our relationship was being built around Think and Grow Rich. We both were big time, followers of the book, loved the book, read the book, talked about the book a lot. He had this opportunity in LA. He invited me to this opportunity. And he was like, yeah, man, you're going to be there. A buddy of mine that's an arthroscopic surgeon is going to be there. Another buddy of mine who's a big-time real estate investor in LA is going to be there. And another buddy of mine that owns a lot of different storage facilities all over the Midwest is going to be there. And then there was me. I had a job. I had a job that wasn't even cutting six figures yet, right? And he was inviting me to go out with these multimillionaires. I couldn't turn it down. Now, what was the biggest layer of resistance for me? Can I afford to hang out with them? That was the biggest layer of resistance for me. Is like, can I even afford to be with these guys? That was my biggest fear. So I fly out to LA. I could afford that, right? I fly out to LA. By the way, they're staying at a 5-star hotel in LA. So that maxed my budget. So I'm already at max. The hotel and the flight, I'm at max. I have no idea. I know we have an event to go to. I have a ticket to that event, right? But outside of that, it's like, man, I hope, we don't spend money. I hit the ground. I meet up with the guys. Jeff tells me, I'm going to have to remind him of this because I don't even know the position he puts me in. I don't even know if he knew the position he put me in. Jeff tells me, he's like, hey, we all decided that as a group, we're going to wear all black to this event tonight. Now, mind you, I packed a suit. I did not pack a black suit. Okay? That means I'm going to have to spend money. Oh, Lord. Right? I didn't have money like that. And so he says, all right, man, so we're going to run to the store and get black outfits, black suits, because nobody brought black. And by the way, these are millionaires, so they didn't think to themselves like, oh, that's going to cost money. They like, we're just going to go get black suits. And everybody do what they, everybody had different styles, so we all dressed away. Now me, I think we went to Nordstrom. And at the time, I could not afford, Nordstrom. Y'all paying full price for stuff? Where's Ross? Where's Marshalls, right? Where's TJ Maxx, Jesus? I remember being in Nordstrom's with these fellas, right? They just pulling stuff off the hooks because we had an hour. They pulling stuff off the hooks. Hey, can you taper this, taper that? Oh, the taper this is going to cost. No, I don't care. How fast can you do it? And I'm just like, I'm having an anxiety attack. I'm like, Jesus. Jeff walks up to me and he was like, hey, man, I was going to buy this shirt, but it's too big for me. I think you can wear it. It's a large. It's the last one. This shirt is phenomenal. And he turns it around, and on the label is Versace. I do not even want to look at the price tag, right? I'm like, he's like, you should buy this shirt. And I'm looking at the shirt. It's a nice shirt. It's all black. I still own it to this day, by the way. That's a whole nother conversation. But he turns it around to me, and it says Versace. I'm already scared to look at the price tag, right? He's like, you should get this shirt. Now, mind you, I found a suit. And at this point, I'm already clear I got to use a credit card. Okay, this is not going to be a cash transaction. I'm probably going to be paying for this for the next 2 to 3 months. It's like, but see, here's the difference, you all. Because you hear me sometimes talk about this, and I'm like, be careful of this type of thing. I want to be clear contextually. I'm hanging out with multimillionaires, right? And I'm likely going to an event with other multimillionaires. And what I didn't realize is Jeff was teaching me how to look the part. So he gives the shirt to me. I look at the price tag, $400 for one shirt. What? Now, perspective is different, right? Because at this point in my life, if he handed me the shirt, I'd be like, this is dope. I would go pay for it. But $400, sir, do you realize that most of my shirts might cost me $20? I think $40 is a lot for a shirt. At that point in my life, I thought $40 was a lot for a shirt. You take like $400. Would you pay $400 for a shirt? Would you pay $400 for a shirt to hang out with me or at an event with other multimillionaires? You would? Okay, good choice, right? I was asking our day. So I buy the shirt and the suit. I got to tell you, when I got dressed that night, now, when I went to the register, I had a complete, and by the way, they all buying their stuff and talking, and it's a normal day for them. And I can barely think. I'm just like watching her ring $400 for the shirt, $1,000 for the suit. Oh, thank God I had black shoes. Thank God I had black shoes. Right? I walked out. I think I spent like $1,700. This is the first time I ever spent that much on clothing. We get dressed that night. And I remember looking in the mirror in my hotel room, and I thought, wow, I look good. I look good. And so I go out and meet these gentlemen in the lobby. They got a stretch limo. We do what we're going to do. And let me tell you something. That evening, I received a $1,700 masterclass on wealth. It was so worth it. Was I uncomfortable? Yes. But I learned something about wealthy men, about wealthy people, about how they move, about how they network, that changed my life. I believe at the time, if it was 2007, 2008, it's almost 20-something years, I was about 28, 29 years old. And I learned something. Here's the other thing. This is why I told the story. It sharpened my aim. I knew that I never wanted to be in a situation where if I had to spend time with wealthy people and they changed the agenda, that I couldn't afford it. It was like it sharpened my aim. I was like, now, even to this day, I don't go out and buy $400 shirts. All right. I still own that shirt, by the way, too. And it's still, I just wore it to an event. There's something to $400 shirts, folks. Right? Because that was 20 years ago. right? And that shirt still looks good today. So the shirt, somebody put like the shirt was an investment. Not only was it an investment in still looking good today, but it was an investment in the masterclass I received that night. And I learned something from buying that shirt that, wow, when I spend money on things, they actually last. They actually last. Well, I don't wear the suit anymore because the suit is out of style. It was in style 20 years ago. I can still fit it, but, blah, blah, blah. But that shirt still works. Now, why did I tell that story? That experience sharpened my aim. It was very clear to me what was possible, how people lived, the experiences that they had. Like that evening in LA, hanging out with an orthoscopic surgeon, hanging out with a real estate investor. And this guy was buying stuff up all over LA, right? And by the way, everybody knew him. Hey, Larry. We walk in like, Larry, hey. He's shaking hands and, introducing us to different people. And how people moved in this environment was just different. And it gave me a new clarity on where to aim. So I'll ask the question again, because what most of us will do is we want this clear idea on how. I had no idea that was part of my pathway to wealth. I would have thought a book, a particular investment, in terms of how you think, how, those are the ways. I had no idea that accepting that invitation and spending time with those gentlemen would change how I saw money and how I saw wealth and my ability to see myself in those type of situations. It sharpened my aim. It sharpened my aim. Often you'll hear me say that we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Why is this important? Why is this important? There's something about discomfort that sharpens focus. Let me say it again. There's something about discomfort that sharpens focus. One of the reasons I'm taking leaders into the jungle of Uganda is because I know they're going to see the world in a way they never saw before, simply because I'm putting them in an uncomfortable place. They're going to see trees they never saw before, leaves they never saw before. And by the way, they may have seen them before. They didn't pay attention because they were comfortable. They were in the forest preserve, not the jungle. You get the difference? So their focus is going to sharpen. I can guarantee you while they're on the trail in the jungle with me, they're not going to be thinking about, oh, my boss said. You follow? There's something about discomfort that sharpens your focus. When I'm comfortable, I can think about all of my concerns. Isn't that interesting? When I'm comfortable and I'm warm, instead of being grateful, most of us are sitting thinking about everything that's not going well and everything that's not going right. And there's something about discomfort that sharpens the focus and sharpens the aim. We have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. One of the things that a clear and focused aim does is it makes you uncomfortable with where you are, because you can see where you're supposed to be so clearly. So then when I'm uncomfortable where I am, it sharpens my focus. And because my focus is sharpened, I'm now willing to do the things that otherwise would have been difficult to do. Like forego my distractions. Nobody on that trail is going to be thinking about their favorite episode. That's not, you get where I'm, like, they're going to be, what's in front of me? I got to step here. What's around me? Watching the Rangers, being aware of the sounds. They'll see things they never saw before. One of the things, like the views in Uganda are just gorgeous. I imagine like they're going to stop and just look at things. They like, just take it in. Wow. And because of that experience, they'll come back transformed and changed because they went through a certain level of discomfort that sharpened their focus. You can't come out of that and be the same. You can't come out of that and be the same. When it comes to focus, there are 10 things I believe that are destroying our ability to properly focus. And let me share this real quick because I want to go back to my mature audience. Because sometimes we have facts. Well, Anil, you have to understand as you age, your focus does get impeded. And, maybe that's the reason why I can't focus the way I should. And so like what we do is we disqualify ourselves from things, right? So I went and did some research because I know my audience. And I did the research on how older or elderly people can develop focus. And I got it from a neuroscientist. I got this research from a neuroscientist. And one of the things that he talked about is that there is one way that has been proven to support people in focusing. And he said, like, you don't even have to do it every day. If you do it once, think about this. If you do it once, that this will exponentially shift your focus. And he said, well, here's what you do. You close your eyes and you meditate for a minimum of 17 minutes, just one time. And you bring your attention to everything that's going on with your body, to your breathing and everything that's going on with your body. And that's what you're concerned with for 17 minutes. When you notice yourself thinking about the presidential race, you bring yourself back. Right? When you notice yourself thinking about your grandchildren, you bring yourself back to yourself, to what's going on in your body. I feel a little pain in my hip, whatever it might be, right? I feel, I noticed this, and you focus on your breathing and your body. 17 minutes, one time, he says, will drastically improve your focus. So write that down and just say, when are you going to take that step? Now, so that's like, and by the way, this is for people with ADHD. This is for people who are elderly. He was like, this is scientifically proven to increase focus. And one of the things he talked about was that one of the reasons people can't focus is because they have these brain blinks where they're focused on something and the brain blinks and takes them somewhere else, right? He's like, and so what practicing focusing on the body and your breathing, it decreases the amount of brain blinks. And then you can actually focus. When I think about developing your aim, I believe one of the reasons most of us haven't developed what we're aiming at is because we have trouble focusing. So I can do a whole show like this, talk about developing your aim. Oh man, this is really good. Linnell is right. I need to develop my aim. And then after the show, you sit there and you say, okay, what am I aiming at? And then the phone rings. Done. It's over. It's over. You get where I'm going? It never happens, right? Or you sit down and the television's going in the background and something pops up. Boom. Biden versus Trump. Why we believe that this presidential race is the most important. I got to unmute. Done. You won't. Distractions. The number one reason many of us won't aim, many of us don't focus, is we get distracted. I believe the most valuable thing that you can do for yourself is give yourself silence. And now I know the most valuable thing, according to the neuroscientists, that you can do for yourself is to give yourself silence. And then he said, just 17 minutes. That's all. Linnell, that's a lot. And here's the thing. Nobody says that. They're like, oh, I can do 17 minutes. But if you go into it thinking it's a lot, you might actually do it. And the reason I say it's a lot is because have you done it yet? And if you haven't done it yet, then yeah, that's a lot. And so when will you do it? When will you create the opportunity for you just to focus, to just develop your aim? What are you aiming at? What are you aiming at? I'm in this business program for scaling my business. And the woman who's running the program, she sent out this post I guess she sent it out this morning. I saw it this morning. The first part of it said, I thought it was right on point with what we're talking about today. She's like, what is your 2024 aim? Like, what are you aiming at for your business? Like, boom. And then she was like, and whatever you're aiming for, are you measuring? Are you measuring? Forget how. Like, stop. How is a complete distraction, folks. I don't care who I bring into this studio. Wealthy person after wealthy person. Established successful leader after established successful leader. There are going to be some trends that we can find, but every story is going to be uniquely different. And the reason it's uniquely different is because they are uniquely different. And how they did what I did. Let me think of some people you all know. Oh, here's a perfect example. So attorney Ernest Fenton. Many of you all know attorney Ernest Fenton, how he created his life. You've read his books, things like that, right? We're friends. He's probably listening right now. He doesn't like when I tell folks that he's wealthy. But they already know Ernest. Anyway, so how Ernest has created his life is completely different from how I created mine. Completely different. Went to the Army. He went to Harvard. Like, I didn't do none of that. Completely different. And we will look at someone like an Ernest, but if I'm Linnell and I try to go that path and it doesn't work, we're like, well, it doesn't work. Because that was his path, not yours. He developed his path by aiming at something. My question to you is, what are you aiming at? What are you aiming at? I can even go, I use Fenton because that's like that's somebody you can, like a lot of you guys in Chicago can touch and talk to, okay? But then we look at celebrities, and it just seems like, so out of, it's like I can't believe they're living like that. How did they do that? And most of them, if you interview and spend time with them, like, they can't fully articulate how. I can't fully, like, I can tell you how certain things came together, like the story with Jeff in LA, right? But that wasn't on my project plan. You get where I'm going? I just knew it was the right thing to do because of where I was aiming. How I became a leader in corporate America, like a lot of the things, like a lot of the actions I took, they weren't on my project plan. They came up because something else came up. I took the action because of where I was aiming. And so part of how we achieve our goals is first being super clear on where I'm aiming and allow where I'm aiming to dictate the next action. The top 10 reasons we have a problem focusing. I'm sorry. Number 1 is distractions. Number 2 is a lack of sleep. Like, what good is it if you're aiming at something and you're so tired that during one of your blinks you fall asleep? You'll never pull the trigger. Right? Most of us are exhausted, man. And then we can't figure out why we can't focus. Like most of us are just completely exhausted. Number 3 is avoidance. I talked about avoidance. There are things in your life, low-hanging fruit, that should be handled before you set audacious goals. You want to be a millionaire, but you're in debt. Let's be clear. The first goal is to get out of debt. How about that? Like, and I don't have to teach a masterclass on that. It's like we'll set the millionaire goal to avoid what's right in our face. It's like right in your face. I need to be out of debt, but I'm going for $1 million. And then we'll justify by saying, but if I'm a millionaire, then I'll knock out the debt. And then I can't even aim at being a millionaire because the debt is just smacking me in the face. Number 4 is creating a plan. Like, most of us don't even know how to create the plan. This is what I'm covering with the Slayer Goals members right now. Creating your plan. Like, how do you create a plan? And by the way, most people will say, well, Linnell, isn't that the how? But I give them the template for how to aim at something and then create reverse milestones. Well, then if I'm a millionaire, that means at some point I earned $800,000. If I earned $800,000, that means at some point I earned $500,000, right? And then if I earned $500,000, that means at some point I earned $250,000, right? And then you go to, you back your way into it, and then you figure out how to make $100,000. Like, if I don't know how to make $100,000, how am I make $1 million? I remember, I shared this on the air. I remember playing $100,000. I just want to save $100,000. Why did I want to save $100,000? Because I wanted to have $1 million saved at one point. So I started with 100. I want to save 100,000. I want to have $100,000 in a savings account. And so I just went for that. But best believe I started with 5,000 first. Right? When I set that goal, I had 50. You get where I'm going? So then it's like, it would be cool to see 6 figures in an account. That would be so cool. Like, so let me set that goal. But a lot of times we were like, I want $10,000 in my account. We haven't even figured out how to save 1,000. Like, stop the avoidance game. Create a plan. Number 5, getting exercise. See, like, some of us think like this. And by the way, for Slayer Goals members, if you've been a member, I think one of the things that gets in the way, I'm very pragmatic. So I'm just going to say, like, well, if you're not exercising and sleeping, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to hit an audacious goal. Folks get discouraged by that. Well, I got to exercise and sleep. Like, yep. I mean, that seems fair. That seems fair to me. Like, I believe one of the major reasons many of us are living mediocre lives is because we get mediocre sleep and mediocre workouts. And I'm sorry. And by the way, like, I vetted this list too because I wanted to make sure I wasn't, like, this ain't my stuff just alone. Like, what are other people saying? It was like the same 10 things. If you research the top 10 reasons people can't focus, it's like this. Like, my 10 was the same 10. So it ain't just me saying this. Like, you got to move. Your body was built to move. What makes you think you're going to get the maximum from your mind if you're not moving your body? If I intend for my mind to perform tremendous mental feats, at a minimum, my body should be able to keep up. And I get that as we age, certain things happen. So what is exercise for you? Number 6 is an organized workspace. I can walk into a person's office and it tells me everything I need to know, like, about them. Where they are in that moment, where they are in their space. You know what I'm saying? And it's not always just about like whether or not the office is super organized. Like people have organized, like their own organized chaos sometimes, right? It's organized to them and they can be high performing. You could tell that they'd be like, oh, Linnell, so then I had, and they grab something, hey, it's exactly what they needed. And it's blah, 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 and they put it back, right? And it's like, I don't like how those papers are, but it's not me, it's them, right? They're organized. That's their organization. So I'm not talking about OCD type of like, I'm just talking about organized. Are you organized? Like, do you know where your stuff is? That would be, how many people lost their aim because they were looking for their stuff? Like, just real simple. Where's my keys? Right? And this is your everyday, you always looking for something. Where's my purse? You know, where's my jacket? Where's this? Where's that? Where's this? It's like, how can you aim at anything? You know, it's like having, like, that's the same soldier. You could be the best marksman, but if you can't find the clip and the bullets, you're in trouble. Where are my bullets? Where's my clip? Where's my scope? Like, this is why we get distracted. Like, sometimes we have to calm down. How can I be relaxed and I don't even know where my stuff at? Like, create a system. We moved into a new house, and one of the things I've been doing in the house, it's not as, 2022. But as we are going, part of how I'm making it our home is how we organize it. Oh, you know what? We need a coat rack in the mudroom. And then that coat rack filled up, right? There's 4 of us. I mean, it filled up. Like, it's crazy that we didn't have a coat rack. You get where I'm going? Because when I put the coat rack up, it was like, it wasn't enough. So I told my guy, I said, hey man, I need to put another coat rack on this wall over here. So we put a shorter coat rack. Now it's enough. Why? So we can be organized. So as a family, when we're aiming to do something, we're not distracted by where things are. We know the coats are in the mudroom. We know the shoes are in the bins in the mudroom, right? Organization. Number 7, working too hard. We live in a time where people are exhausting themselves. Like, I mean, doing work that, I don't know. Does it really matter? Most of what we focus on, I think, is survival type work, pay the bills type work. And this is where we have to ask ourselves, how much is that costing me? Is holding down 2 jobs to maintain a particular lifestyle? Because that's the other piece, right? Is I've come to learn, dealing with like different people from different income levels. There's a person out there that's making $30,000 and they have the space to make 50 because they got one job. Right? So then they come home and they're aiming. There's another person who's making 45 that will never make 50 because they don't have the space to aim. They don't have the time to aim, so they'll be at 45 for the rest of their lives. And if they were just willing to sacrifice and say, let me maybe cut this $15,000 this year so I can actually create more, they can get to 50, 70, 80. I believe we get into these cycles, right? And then maybe the other 15, they don't want to give that up because that's how they get the jackets, the shoes, the car. And so we're more concerned with what's happening right now, how we look right now, than where we intend to go, our aim. I believe a lot of folks are working too hard to maintain lifestyles so they can look a certain way. And by the way, they only get to look that way in a small percent of their time. Only on a Saturday evening do you get to drive up and get out with your brand new shoes. Like only within that hour or two. And then sometimes they never even see your car. And sometimes they never look down at your shoes. So really, you're doing it for you. You're doing it because you feel inadequate in some type of way. And it's keeping you stuck. It's keeping you stuck. This performing for other people. Sometimes we're working too hard, not for survival, but for other folks. And so you're exhausting yourself. You're killing yourself so other people think a particular way about you. Shouldn't your aim be more important? Shouldn't the target be more important? And I only know how to tell my stories, you guys, but I remember driving a Chevy Lumina until I was like, I'm going to drive this car until the wheels fall off. Because of where I was aiming. And I remember pulling into a car wash one day. My buddy had an Escalade. This is back. Escalades had just came out, so this is like the early 2000s. And he had an Escalade. No, it might have been the 90s. Late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, he had an Escalade. And I remember, man, he was washing that, was washing that Escalade. I'm washing my Lumina. I was looking at that truck like, wow. The reason I didn't go out and try to do what he did is because I was just aiming somewhere different. I was too focused on my aim to be focused on what other people were doing. It didn't really matter that he was driving an Escalade and I was driving a Chevy Lumina. Like, the Lumina was taking me where I needed to go. The question is now, what is he driving and what am I driving? That's and I'm not saying that to cast shade. I'm just saying it to cast perspective. Like, where are you going matters more than where you are now. In this moment, where are you aiming? Some of us, we're so focused on now, with so little concern for the future, that we're going to end up in a spot that is far worse than anything we're dealing with now. Where are you aiming? Number 8 is poor diet. Like, Friday night, I took my son to the movies. And I gave in. I let him have more sugar than I normally. We hanging out. And by the way, he did phenomenal. I mean, him and I went through basketball drills. He sat at the barbershop with me. And I'm like, he's like, Dad, can I get some Peak lemonade and some gummy bears? Like, whoa, are you kidding me? And then he wanted popcorn. I'm like, how does that work? Dad, can I really? Oh, Dad, please, Dad, please. So we read all the labels they had Sour Patch Kids, they had Red Dot 40, right? And by the way, this is how I'm training him. So we looked at the ingredients, right? I'm like, no, we can't do Sour Patch Kids. It got so much dye in it, right, Dad? No, too much dye. Right, then we went to the fruit snacks, Welch's fruit snacks, high fructose corn syrup, but it's 100% fruit, right? So no, we can't have that. So then it was like some gummy bears there, and didn't have any corn syrup, anything. It had sugar, but it was made with beeswax. I was like, here we go. So he had that pink lemonade. All when we walked out the movies. He was charged up. Let's go! Right? Running up and down the stairs with his cousin. Of course. He just ate all that sugar, right? He knew exactly what was going on. He got to run it out now. What about us? Like, how you expect your mind to stay steady on one thing and you eating like a child? I'm going to leave that where it's at. Number 9 is stress. Some of us are just stressed out, man. And you need to learn how to take a well-being moment. I would say a day, but how you going to get to a day if you can't take a moment? Like, just to give yourself permission. And I'm not saying sit in front of a television, stuff like give yourself permission to be silent and present with you. What's going on with me? Number 10 is undiagnosed sickness. Like, if you're doing all these things and you still can't focus, go to the doctor. Like your body's trying to fight something. and often it's an undiagnosed sickness. Those are the 10 reasons that we can't focus. These are the 10 reasons that many of us aren't aiming the way that we should. So my question to you is, what do you need to work on to develop a better aim? It's just this clear, okay? It's just this clear, you all. I have yet to meet someone who has completely figured out how to get where they're going and they're working every step to completion. I have yet to meet that person. I have yet to meet the person that articulates for me, Linnell, I wrote out my plan, I read all the books on how to get there, and then I took every step and nothing got in the way. There was no resistance. It worked like a charm when I knew exactly how to do it. I have yet to meet that person. How is a complete distraction? I have writing and data. I don't have the time to go into it, but writing and data that proves this. Matter of fact, next week, I'm going to come with some of the data. We're gonna keep talking about this how blockade because many of us are given to it. And this morning, all I'm asking you is, where's your aim? Hey, my inspired peoples. Linnell Harris here, certified ontological coach and trainer. I'm so excited that you're watching the channel. By the way, did you know you can catch the show live at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every Sunday morning? You can. All you have to do is go to my Facebook stream, Coach Linnell Harris, catch the stream live, or you can listen to the radio show via iHeart at WVON 1690 AM. But since you're here, if you love the content, I ask that you share it, like this particular video, and subscribe to the channel. I hope you're having a great day.